Hi, everybody who is here with us live during our webinar, and hello to all of you watching this on YouTube. Welcome. This is Guru's third webinar in the series for the 2021 school year. And today we are going to be talking about class activities. So just a quick overview of what we will be doing. We'll do a quick intro of who we are. We also have linked our webinar schedule, so we do typically one per month, and the schedule is clickable from right there, and you can register using the links on that document. And then once we actually get into the meat of the webinar, we will talk about what is a class activity, overview of how you can use them, and then we'll talk about 5 specific use cases where you might end up using a class activity. And in between, Dina will actually do a demo showing you the clicks that you'll make to follow each of those use cases. So before we do intros, I do just want to remind you that the webinar is being recorded. You are more than welcome to unmute and ask a question at any time. Interrupt us if you need to, we will not be offended. You're also welcome to put the questions in chat and we will answer them there. So super briefly, my name is Hannah Bonville and I work at Guru, focusing mostly on implementation and support. So many of you that are watching have interacted with me and I look forward to interacting with more of you in the future. And I am joined by Dina, so I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Dina. I am Guru's Academic Operations Manager. I've been with them for almost 2 years now, and I'm excited to talk about class activities today.
Awesome. So let me just move us forward. Before we get into our demos and use cases, I do want to draw your attention to the support resources that are linked on this page. Again, all these links are active and you'll be able to find the slide deck on our community site. The site is linked. The handbook is also linked and we have a YouTube page with lots of videos and that's also where we house all of our recorded webinars. So you can watch them as many times as you need to in order to really get your hands around whatever concept it is you're looking for. As always, you can email us at support@guru.org if you have questions. We try to get back to you within 24 hours since we know you are, many of you are working in classrooms and you need those answers quickly. So very fast, we will talk about super high level overview. What is Navigator? And then that'll help set the context for what are class activities. So I will turn it over to Dina.
All right. So, quick overview of the Navigator's functionality. Much like a GPS can pinpoint where you are right now and route you to your destination, the Navigator can do this for learning materials. So, through our asynchronous learning, our typical learning journey experience, we are able to locate gaps through the diagnostic, map out the route to the learning journey, and then reroute with support resources when needed. Now, note that that is for asynchronous. This webinar focuses more on the synchronous activities, the class activities. So, as you can see here, we'll be taking a look at the class activities page today.
Okay, and you can excuse the little thump sounds for my computer, but you can access the class activities as a teacher from your class card. So it looks like this, no matter what the subject is. You can access it by clicking on the little push pin. If you hover over that, it will say class activities. And if you're in your class already, meaning you've already clicked on your class card and you're doing other things, you'll notice the class activities tab at the top of your screen. You can always click on that. So there's a couple of different ways you can access it. So first question, what are class activities? So as Dina just mentioned in that overview, the whole goal of Navigator is to figure out where your students are starting, where they're going, and what's the best way to get them from point A to point B. So we fill that whole journey with resources like videos and simulations, and also assessments where we can gauge whether the student has mastered something or whether they need a little bit more support. So class activities are like a bonus for you as the teacher. or as the instructor. So they are activities, and you'll see them abbreviated on our slides as CAs. So they are activities that you can assign if you choose to supplement what your students are doing in their learning journeys. So each of your students might have a different learning journey. We all know some of our kids are starting at one spot, some are starting in another spot. So all their journeys might look different, and they can work on those independently or asynchronously. You have the option, and I underlined it, if you choose. So this is all kind of just like bonus features. If you want, you can supplement that learning journey with specific class activities. It's almost like making sure every student makes the same turn at the same time. So normally they're on their paths and they're navigating them on their own, but you can also supplement that with class activities to have a synchronous experience or have your students focus on something you want them all to be working on at the same time. So as I kind of just mentioned, the learning journeys, that individualized path from the starting point to the destination, they're full of pre-selected resources. So hopefully you know by now, you don't have to do anything as the teacher or instructor to get your students starting on their learning journeys. The Navigator platform uses a whole bunch of techniques that are so far above my pay grade to figure out where students are starting, where they're going, and then that whole pathway is full of activities that are already there, so you don't have to assign anything. Class activities, like these little bonus things that we're going to be talking about today, gives you that opportunity to add additional items at will. I'm trying to say if you choose an at will as much as possible, based on what your students need. So maybe they're all on their learning journeys and you think to yourself, gosh, last year's class really struggled with adding fractions together. I want to make sure this year's class, even though they're all on their independent learning journeys, I'm going to add a class activity to make sure we're all doing the same activity at the same time on adding fractions. So there's lots of different ways to use class activities. What I just mentioned is just one, that class-wide formative assessment. The exit ticket approach is just one strategy. We're going to talk about 5 today. And you can choose from a really big bank of existing class activities. So just like with the learning journey, where you don't have to plug in any of those learning activities or resources, the same is true with class activities. Sort of the extent of the work that you need to do as the teacher is search for the activity within a library that already exists and click a little plus icon to assign it. So you don't need to create anything. You don't need to build anything. It's all already there, just like a big old bank of class activities for you to pick from. So I am going to turn it over to Dina for our overview of searching for a class activity. So those are those 2 steps that you as the teacher need to do. 1, search, 2, assign. So the very first thing we'll look at is what a search looks like.
All right. So I'm logged into a teacher account, as you can see. And for this account, I have this little mock classroom for Math Navigator. And then just a quick recap, you can access the class activities by clicking on this pushpin icon. Then you're brought to your class activities page. So we're going to be focusing on searching the libraries in this demo. So first of all, I'm going to just give you a quick tour of this, and then I'll show you how to search within your scope and sequence. So if we look on the right-hand side, this is where most of your clicks are going to be. So this is where we're going to assign an activity. So we can see we have assessments, collections, offline activities. We have a search function. Then we also have a filter. So the first method of searching I'm going to show you is searching within your scope and sequence. So depending on what type of user you are, if you're associated with one of our lab schools, we'll probably have your scope and sequence built in. And what that means is basically the order in which you teach your topics for your school. So this one, I'm in grade 8. And I can see that I'm in geometry. But if I click to collapse geometry, I can see the different domains. And let's say I'm teaching the number system in class. So I want to search for something about the number system within my scope and sequence. So I know that I'm teaching 8NS1. So I can come in here and then just check out what content might be available. And this also varies depending on your tenancies or how you have your account. So different users might have access to different libraries, such as the Gooru catalog or my content or the course map. And then because this is a demo account, unfortunately, I don't have too many resources available right here, but we also have teacher resources available, and those are available on Open Guru actually. So teachers should have access to those. So searching within scope and sequence, we can see the domains. If we click on the domain, we can then see the ordering of the topics within it. If we click on the topics, we can see the associated standards and then any student or teacher resources associated. You can also click show all if you want to see everything. All right. And then for searching Guru's catalog, that's that show all, and you can see there's a lot. So I'll show you how to narrow this down using a key term. So I'm just going to use inverse. Enter, and you can see that I'm currently in collections. So these are all collections of resources that the students can study. We can see the ones that are found from the course map. We can find signature collections from Navigator Learning Schools, all sorts. We could also view assessments if we'd like. So we can see again the Gooru catalog if you've created anything personally, not that you have to, but if you felt like trying to make content, you can assign it from my content right here. So we can see this is for a keyword. We can also filter that keyword by competency. So we could do that through this. I'll show you what I did again. So I'll actually do this without the keyword, just so you can see at a higher level. So I'm up here under the assign activity. I'm going to click on this filter icon, and I can see the content sources, so the different libraries. So you can filter by library if you wanted, but I'm going to show you how to filter by competency. So you click filter by competency, and then because this is a Math Navigator course, I'm going to assume this is K-12. So you select the category, K-12, the framework, which it will be by default the framework you're already using. I'm just showing you for redundancy's sake. And then you select your grade level, your domain, and then your standard. And then you can filter your search by competency. You can also filter by audience if you so choose. So we can see right here that there are a few different assessments available for this in this demo account. See if there are any collections in this. Yep, and there are a couple in this demo account as well. And then also, I don't think there would be any offline activities, but let's see. No, that's okay. All right. And then if you feel like removing these, you can unfilter if you so choose. I'll just keep it open. That's what I get for trying to just make it grade 8. Oh, well. All right, and then I'll hand it back over to Hannah to do a recap of the library search.
Awesome. Actually, before you unshare,
okay,
I do just want to, just again for redundancy's sake, I'm going to start using that phrase a bunch. I do want to just talk about the different libraries.
Okay.
So just to sort of reiterate what Dina already said, if there's a way to remove the filter, can we? It is not mandatory.
It just likes to, there we go.
It really wants us to look at congruence.
It really, truly does. And I really don't want to.
Okay, leave it. No big deal. So let's just go from the top and look at the different libraries. So the very first one right there is Gooru Catalog. That is like anything created by any Gooru user ever, anywhere. So pros, there's usually lots of stuff. We have this hyper restricted on this account, so we sort of don't overwhelm. But on your account, when you do these searches, you'll notice that Guru catalog is lots of stuff. So that's the pro, is that there's tons of people out there with Guru accounts, tons of teachers building content. So it's teacher created content. The one caution I would give is just preview, and we'll show you how to do that. Just preview those things before assigning them, just to make sure it's exactly what you want. So Guru catalog is like the most open part of the funnel. It's like the broadest category. My content, self-explanatory, as Dina said, and as we've sort of been saying over and over again, you don't have to create anything. If the mood strikes, if you're playing around and you've created some type of content and you want to assign it to your students, you'll find it under my content. Course map is drawing directly from the student's learning journey. So think of that just like the learning journey. So that pathway that we were talking about in the beginning of taking students from wherever their unique starting point is to their destination that's full of activities, you can actually pull right from those, and that's in that course map section. And then I'll probably not talk too much about those last three. They're more curated libraries. So depending on if you're a lab school that's collaborating with and co-creating with Guru, you might have a bunch of those curated libraries. If not, you might just have the top three. Either way, there's lots and lots and lots of content, and we're going to show you very shortly how you can start assigning those. So I just wanted to draw your attention to the differences in the libraries, but by default, like Dina's showing, they're all visible. So you don't have to select them, they're just all there. So let me take us back, if I can remember. Okay. Alrighty, so I am going to take us back to our slides and just sort of recap. So that'll be the format we follow. Dean will give you a demo, and then I'll just do a recap. That way, hopefully you don't get sick of either one of us. So the search idea is we've got all these activities that are already created. And they can come as assessments, the little percent guy, collections, which kind of looks like a waffle, and offline activities. We'll talk about this one in a second, but your three activity types are these three icons, and whichever one is blue is the one that you're looking for. So if I were searching by a search term here, science teacher, let's say I'm searching for mitosis. I would type mitosis. If I want an assessment, I'd make sure this is blue. If I want a collection of resources instead, I'd click this. And if I wanted something more like a project with the word mitosis in it, I'd click here. Just like Dina showed, you can use that keyword or you can filter down by competency or learning standard. So if you know the specific standard in your curriculum, like 6RP3, if that's what you need to find an assessment or a collection on, you can actually filter down using this little filter icon. And just like Dina showed, you can click, select your framework, the grade, and then the competency. So you have a bunch of different ways to narrow down all the search results. Like we just talked about, there's lots of different content libraries, and you have the ability, like we'll show you, to preview any of them. So you're not wedded to it. You can click on it, take a look, say, meh, this isn't really what I want, or this is awesome. You can preview first. And we always recommend that. Preview first, then assign. So we did step one, which was search, and now we'll do step two, which is assign.
All right. So I'll quickly show you how to assign and also just very briefly how to preview. So as we mentioned, you can preview anything in these libraries just by clicking on it. So I'll click on the CFU. Simple. So you can do that for any CFU that you choose, or any collection, any offline activity, whatever type of content you would like. So you should preview your content first, and then when you're ready to assign it to your students, you'll just click the plus sign. So I think I'm going to assign, which one strikes my fancy? I'll go with I'll just wait for my content. Why not? So I'll click schedule, and then you can see the start date and the end date. So start date is today, and I'll put the end date as Friday. No, we'll do tomorrow. Let's have them do it overnight. And then if you would like to include a video conference, you can by toggling this on. We can go more into that later. So I've selected the date range. I'm going to click add activity, and then it just shows up right here in this list. So I'm just going to take this opportunity very quickly to go over this part of the class activities page because I didn't do so yet. So this is our plan. So any class activities that you have assigned will go here. So we're in the daily view right now, and I assigned that class activities to start today. So we can see it right here. And then some important steps. So let's pretend I just clicked the plus, I entered the date and I scheduled it. It popped up right here. For the students to get credit for it, to get mastery, you have to make sure that this thing is checked, this mastery. You can turn it off if you don't want it to count towards their skylines, but you can turn it on if you do want it to count towards their skylines. And then the most important bit of this is turn it on. You should activate it. So once it's activated, it'll show up on your students' pages, and then they can interact with it. They can watch the resource or play the game, answer the questions. So I'll show you, I just activated that. So let me swap over here to a student in this class. All right, I'm just going to refresh my page so you can see. We can see that it just showed up on the student's account. So we can see that it's due. And all I have to do is then click play. So let me switch back to the instructor. And then for planning purposes, I just want to note, you can schedule these as far in advance as you'd like. So if you're planning 2 months in advance, you can schedule these for 2 months in advance. But the one thing that might be helpful for you is you can actually change the view of these class activities. So this is by day, so we can see that's today's date. But we can also do a weekly view to see all of the different ones that are assigned through the week. Or if we have a bunch for the month, we could see the monthly view. Unfortunately, all of these are start today, so they're showing up for all of them. But you do have the option to change the date range. You can also do a custom date range if you'd like. And using this page specifically, you can see that you have one class activity assigned this day, one this day, and one this day. You can tell by the black dot. So if you have multiple on one day, there will be multiple black dots. All right. I think that's good for assigning class activities.
Awesome. So again, the struggle to switch screens. No matter how many times I do it, oh my goodness. It's just, you can see that, right, Dina?
Oh, yep.
Okay.
I understand. I was doing that too.
Ay, ay, ay. Okay, so the assigning, we did the search, now we do the assign. So again, I don't even have it on here, and I should, but I sort of don't even think about it anymore. You want to preview first. Just double check, make sure it's what you want. And you could just do that by clicking on a search result. If it's what you like, you just click that plus button and it's added to your class. You just pick your end date and your start date. Like Dina said, you can schedule in advance. I am deeply jealous of those of you that are able to schedule 2 months in advance. I think the best I managed was like 48 hours. But you can schedule things that don't even start today. So just like Dina said, if you want to schedule something that starts February 5th and ends February 8th, knock yourself out. You can totally do that. The mastery circle right here on this class activities card will probably be checked off by default, and that just means that the students' results on that class activity will impact their skyline. So if they master this competency for the first time by taking this class activity, they'll fill in one more block on their skyline. That's all that means. You can uncheck it or you can leave it checked. The big one that for whatever reason my brain likes to forget is just turn it on. So you can schedule all these things in advance, and by default they're off. So you can do whatever you want on your teacher page, schedule to your heart's content. Just turn it on, and that means your students will see it. So whenever you're ready for your students to see the activity, just click and it'll toggle from off to on, then it's visible to your students just like Dina showed. And again, you have that video conferencing as optional. We saw the button for that at the point of setting the start date and end date. And it's also available here if you change your mind later. So this really came in handy last year during the virtual learning. So teachers could basically assign the class activity and have it during a video conference so they can watch their kids do it. So it sort of allows the teacher to feel like they're in a classroom and they can watch their kids doing the activity at the same time to give it a synchronous feel. So if you're in a hybrid situation, you can absolutely do this too. All it will require is it'll just ask you if it can have access to your calendar so it can essentially schedule a video conference for that time. So yeah, that's all you need to do. You just search, preview, parentheses, and assign. So the last bit, in the cases where you have class activities that aren't multiple choice, that aren't machine gradable and need your input, we're just going to show you very quickly how to do that. Dina, I hope you enjoy the sample answers I left you as the students.
All right, so I'm going to show you how to do items to grade. So just very quickly, I'm going to back out of this class and I'm going to show you, if we go to the performance overview, we can access the class activity progress from here if we'd like. Just a different way of accessing it. But the big thing is this items to grade. It's right here. We can see we have one thing that's items to grade. So if I click on it, I can see the class activity that I assigned to my students that are ready to grade. By default, it's sorted by student. I can also sort it by activity if I have multiple, or sorted by date if I have them that span through a few days. But I'm going to keep it on sorted by student. So to grade, just click on it, and it'll bring up this pop-up. So first and foremost, you can download all of these submissions if you'd like. And then you can see the prompt that the student was given, the question for this specifically, because it's an offline activity. And so you can see that the student was asked to click on examples, or click on a document to see correct and incorrect word. And then they had to write something and upload something. And then we can see on this side that we have a rubric. So we can see that the student can leave comments, and also the teacher can leave comments. So we can see that this student 1 of 5, wrote, I drew a number line. I can see that the two fractions are the same. You can see the uploads if we'd like. And then I can either click this arrow or this drop-down menu to see a different student. So if I do this, you can see it's graded or not graded. And then by clicking this, we can switch students. But first, I will just grade Jaden. So I'm going to leave a comment that just says, nice job. Click submit, and it'll automatically take me to the other students. So let's say I'm not too sure about this answer, so I'm going to compare it to other ones. All right. And then the teacher can just leave comments for all of them, and then that will complete the grading. So quickly do this so I can clear it out. All right. Click submit, and you're all caught up. There are no more users to grade for this offline activity. And you've graded that.
I was proud of those answers, Dina.
They were very good. You typed a lot. All right.
Okay. So one thing while Dina's still on here, I do want to just point out again, we've been saying a bunch of this is sort of optional and at will. One of the biggest benefits of previewing the activities before you pick them is to see what kinds of questions are included. So if you want to assign one that is all machine graded, like I do not have time to even go through and read, like, no, we don't have time. I just want a machine graded one. Just preview it and make sure that's what you're assigning. If you want to assign one like the one we just looked at where there's an attachment and the students have to look at something and explain and upload, that's fine. Just preview it so you can see what kind of activity you're assigning. The machine gradable ones, nothing for you to do. The ones that are not fully machine gradable will just pop up as items to grade like Dina showed you. And as soon as she puts in that feedback, and some will have scores depending on the activity, some will require scores, some are just feedback based. Whatever information you provide as your grade will then appear for the student as well. So the information does not disappear into the ether. It then goes from you to the student. So it's just like if you're handing them back a paper, physical paper, they're seeing the feedback on their work. The benefit is they can't lose it. So it's always in their accounts. They won't lose the feedback that you have. They can always come back to it. So just another sort of like optional piece. If you don't want to do machine graded, don't. If you do, do. Just preview first. Okay. So let me share. Wow, it's getting rougher as I go. All right, so again, sort of just as I just talked at you, the recap there is the grading is only required when the class activities are not or not entirely machine graded. So anytime there's input required, you can find this out in the preview of the class activity before you assign it. It'll just appear on your page as items to grade once there's things for you to look at. And once you're done grading it, it'll give you the like, yeah, you're done. And it'll just say items to grade 0. Let's say you assign one and you have this items to grade sitting there and you forget to grade it. That's okay too. Nothing's going to be disrupted. Nothing's going to break. It's just going to sit there and patiently wait for you to grade it, just like a stack of papers would. So it's there if you want to grade it or when you get a chance. But nothing you do here with the class activities, sort of no matter what route you take, nothing's going to break the system or disrupt what your students are doing. So you can view student responses, you can check the any uploads they have, if that's required by the prompt. You can see the prompt, and then you can also leave scores and feedback. And in some cases, there's even, like Dina said, where it says student right here, the students can also leave feedback on their side saying like, I don't really get this, or I feel like I did an awesome job. So you've got sort of like a conversation piece between the student and the teacher when you use the non-machine gradable class activities. So just another option that is there for you if you want it. So now let's get into those use cases. So there are 5. We've got about 25 minutes, so we'll move at a nice clip through these. And sort of we've gone through the basics, so now I think we can sort of rev this along. So use case 1. You want to use class activities to formatively assess your students' understanding after a lesson. So this is the exit ticket approach. Instead of giving students like a little exit ticket before they leave or some type of formative assessment, you can use class activities as an option. You'll have access to the scores as well as individual student responses. So let's take a look at what that might look like.
All right. So I'm just going to use one of the class activities that is already assigned on this page. So if we're using this as an exit ticket, let's pretend that I taught this specific competency, this learning standard in class, and then I'm assigning this to my students so that they can take it before leaving. So let's say that all of my students have taken it. So I want to know how they did. Well, it's pretty easy. I just need to click on this score right here. You can see that like down here, it says add data because there hasn't been taken yet. Right here, it's green, there's a score. I'll just click on it. So I can see how many students have taken this CFU so far. This was a machine graded assessment, a CFU. So I can see that it's an 82% average of 26 seconds. I can see it was conducted on the 7th of December with 16 students. And I can also update the data if I want. Here, let me click back out of that. Okay. All right, so we can see all of my students and their scores and if they started or not. So I can click on to any of the students' names to see their exact answers. So I can see that Jaden got 100%. I can see the performance. So when Jaden took this assessment, I can see the answers they chose and the amount of time they spent per question. Just give that a quick review. I can also click next and see that Bella got a 68%. All right. I'm going to click out of this. Click back in. Sorry, click too far out. All right. And then if I wanted to, I could click on this update data. And I could update the score. So if the student actually got something, like they got it correct, but for my purposes, I want it to be a different answer, I could do that here. All right. And then, so I think that might be good.
Cool.
And is there anything else you'd like me to show for this?
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. So I really like that approach because it's like an exit ticket that you would give to figure out if your students are understanding the concept. But just like I said with the students is you can't lose it. Like it stays there. So if I need to go back, it's next week and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, did my kids understand that? I can't remember. I could just go back, look at my plan. I can find that particular assessment and I can just see right on the card, oh, okay, they averaged 82%. Cool. I don't need to reteach that. If I want to dig further and look at individual student responses, maybe I have an IEP meeting coming up and I need to show parent, a guardian, a case manager, evidence of recent work, I can do that. And I can show what answers were picked, how much time students spent. So you have access to sort of like varying levels of information depending on what you want. So again, you have that average score. Have they mastered this? Can I just move on? And it's color coded. So we've got the green meaning like, yes, the average is above 80%, probably can move on. If we're anything other than green, should you reteach? Click in, dig around a little bit. Do I need to reteach to everybody or is it just a couple kids? So you can assign a class activity that assesses the topic you just taught. And you can view those individual scores. And again, you can just click in to see individual responses. So we've got average score. You can click in and see individual scores. And you can click in again if you want to look at specific responses. So I might skip this just for the sake of time. The general idea is that this is a really useful way to do a very quick, organized formative assessment. It's particularly useful for topics that you just taught, but it can also be used to formatively assess topics that you know are trouble spots. So if we come to use case 2, it's kind of like an adjacent use case. Now imagine just some of your students are struggling with a standard and you want to fill in those gaps using class activities. So you can assign different class activities to different groups of students based on their needs. So in this demo that Dina is going to show you, we're going to talk about how you can assign a class activity to just a handful of kids. So we know not all of the kids are struggling. I know it's these 4, for these 5. So we're going to look at how we can just assign an activity to those students since they're the ones that need it.
All right. I took it a moment early. My apologies. Okay. Okay. So let's say that my students are struggling with a concept in, let's do inverses again. All right. So they're struggling with inverses, and I want to assign just an assessment that's a couple learning standards below where they currently are to the students that are struggling. So maybe I'll just pick this one, and then much like I would do for assigning a class activity to a whole class, I'll click schedule, I'll pick the dates, I'll add the activity. The difference is that this time, before clicking activate, I'm going to click this icon, this little avatar. And this is going to bring up a list of all of my students. So these are all the kids in my class, or all the learners in my class. And they're all selected, as we can see, with this double check mark. So we can deselect them, and then we can select the students that we know need this resource just by clicking on their avatars. So I'll say these kids need it. And then also note you can search by student name if you'd like. But I've clicked these student avatars. I'm going to click save. So this is only going to be assigned to those students that I clicked. And now I'm going to turn it on. And now this will only show up on those students' pages.
I really like that approach because it also, I mean, in addition to feeling very personalized and meeting the unique needs of your students, I also like it because it kind of feels confidential. Like, not everybody knows that I need extra support on additive inverses. Like, it's not showing up on everybody's account and just saying Hannah, like assigned to Hannah. It's just showing up for me so I can do it. So it's kind of like a nice low risk, low pressure way to help your students fill in whatever gaps you've identified. So as I was talking, I should have been sharing my screen. All right. So again, you can identify which students need a particular activity. You could identify this maybe using one of the class activities as a formative assessment. Maybe the one that we just looked at where the average was an 82%. I saw like 3 or 4 kids that need extra support. Assign one more activity, just pick those 4 students, meet their needs. And again, you'll just have it show up on those students' pages. So use case 3, one of my favorites. So you want a real-time snapshot of your students' current understanding. So the data that we saw on those class activity cards where it's at 82%, it does update dynamically. But there's also an option to give this whole approach a gamified feel. So instead of having kids or students or learners work on the activities in isolation, there is an option to enhance the class activity to make it feel gamey so the students can see the data populating in real time. So we'll just transition over to that demo.
All right. So this one is fairly simple. I'm just going to use one of the class activities that I already have assigned because we know my students haven't taken these yet. So if you want your students to have that gamified feel, we're going to click on this option called Go Live. So if you click on Go Live, this load. So we can see the CFU, and we can also see all of the students in the class and their avatars. So this assessment has 5 questions. We can see the names of the questions here.
I'm going to be a student.
Oh, okay.
I'm moving slowly.
All right.
Keep going.
So as the students answer questions, these numbers will update in real time. So the teacher or instructor can monitor and see exactly what the students are doing. So I can see for question number 1, looks like Kyle is currently answering.
Oof. I'm not doing well.
Not doing well. They're red. So
Ruh-roh.
much like the color coding in the learning journey and like what we just saw in the class activities for those scores, these scores follow a traffic coloring system. So green is go, you're doing great. Yellow is maybe hit the brakes a little bit and reevaluate. That orange is yellow. And then red is let's actually slam on the brakes and see what's going on here. Something's not quite right.
I got one.
You did. So, because only one student has taken this so far, the average score is his average score. But as all of your students take this, the average score and the percent complete will update. And then you can click on the individual students to see the questions they answered and the choices they selected, in addition to how long they spent on each thing.
So while we have this up, and now that I have, Dina, you took a breath, so I assume that's my time to start talking. If you come out of this report, being shameless, I don't care that I just got a 20%. We know our learners, that doesn't feel great. So there is a way to launch this so it's actually not name associated. So Dina's hovering over it. It's just clicking launch anonymous. It opens like a fresh window and it gives every student like an alphanumeric code that's just meaningless. And so nobody knows who anybody is. So I saw a student got a 20%. I have no idea it was Kyle. So that's one way. I mean, if your students are comfortable having their names, fine. If they're not, or if that's against school policy, you always have the option to run it anonymously. Dina, I think if you go out to class activities, we can look at a go live from earlier that we did, that 82% one.
This one?
Yeah. So we can actually look at some nicer, more useful data. Yeah, beautiful. So we can see here, this is a really nice, like rounded out report of what you can see if you use Go Live. And this populates in real time like you saw. So I can see the average. And then what I think to be the most useful is the, I'm like gesturing on my screen, but it's the bars. Yep. So I can see visually from the green and the red, but also the fraction on the side. The 14 out of 16 of my kids have answered the 5 questions. And then I can see visually, question 1, we're good. Question 2, we're good. Question 3, we're mostly good. Question 4 and 5, I'm a little uncomfortable with how much red is there. So it just super quickly gives you that visual of what I might need to reteach or where my kids are struggling. So I like Go Live. I think it's really fun. And I love that you have the option to run it anonymously. So it really just feels like a super low pressure game.
Then one final note is it's typically presented as a grid. You can make it a list if you'd like, and that gives you the ability to sort by score.
Oh my gosh, Dina, you just opened another door because I love sort by score. Because that's as if you were with us on our prior webinar, sorting by score lets the system make your small groups for you. Mm-hmm. So I can see, like, where might I draw the line here? Scroll down a little bit for me. Boom, right there. So right between Bobby and Bella is where I would draw the line of who I might need to reteach. If I'm feeling extra generous, I might include my Martha and Bobby in that too. But if you sort by score, it just automatically creates those small groups for you. It takes the work out of having to figure out what everybody got. So my favorite. All right. So let me take us back. Getting better, but still rough. Okay. So again, super quick summary. You can use that Go Live, and it just looks like the little bullseye or like a little echo symbol. You can use that feature for an in-the-moment snapshot of what your students are doing and how they're doing. And it feels like a game. And I mean like in the moment. So not even like I assigned it and I'm going to look at it tonight when I go home after I eat dinner. I'm going to just check to see how my students did. This is like in class. Oh my gosh, I need to stop everything and reteach question 4 because none of us got it right. So this is that like super in the moment, but also low pressure gamified experience using that anonymous feature. So we've got 2 more use cases, and I think we have just enough time to go over those. So use case 4 is wanting to assign a challenge to only your accelerated learners. So we're kind of looking at the flip side of use case 2, where I had just a handful of learners that I knew were struggling with something. Now I've got maybe my 3 or 4 most advanced students in my class. They're done with everything. I want to give just them something to work on. So in this case, class activities, specifically offline activities, which is one of those little search options, can help facilitate engagement and also give them some enrichment opportunities.
So I'm going to, once again, access my class activities. And this time I want to challenge my accelerated learners with an offline activity. So I'm going to think of a real world application of something. So let's look at sales. An ice cream sale seems like a good thing because it's relevant to most kids in 8th grade. Most kids like ice cream, so that can help with engagement. So I want to schedule this offline activity. First, I'm going to preview it. So we can see it's an offline rubric graded math activity. And there's a document that describes how to complete the question. So we can see the question, the scenario, and we can also see the teacher rubric that they have to grade. Say, that sounds perfect. So I think I'm just going to assign that. I'm going to assign that. It might take a little bit longer, so I'll do it for about that many days. And now, because I only wanted to assign this to my more accelerated students, I'm going to, once again, click on this icon, the avatar, and then I'm just going to pick my best students. I'll go with these 4. And then once I've selected them, I just need to toggle this on, and it'll show up on their page.
Perfect. So the side note, quiz without quizzing you, we know that this type of activity, because it requires non-machine graded questions, once your students start submitting their responses, it'll show up as items to grade, and it'll just sit there patiently and wait for you. So, all right. Let me share my screen again.
All right.
There we go. So that is, I actually really like that we included that, because that gives us another chance to look at that feature that allows you to select just some students. And it reminds us that we can use it in both directions, for students that need support and for students that maybe need a little bit more acceleration. It's also a great idea if you have students that require specific modifications or accommodations, just assigning them specific things that meet those needs. So again, as your students work on whatever the activity is, in this case, it was sort of the more challenging activity, no matter what kind of class activity it is, it's going to provide you data, which is sort of like the best part. Maybe you use it for mastery, maybe you don't, but it provides you information, quantifiable information, to let you know how your students are doing. Yes, in this example, we assign something a grade level ahead, but as I see my student responses, I will have information, quantifiable information, about how my students are doing on that standard. You can select activities that align with your students' interests, i.e. ice cream, but there's lots of options in all of those libraries that we talked about in the beginning. So again, you've got your Gooru catalog, which is like from any Gooru user anywhere. There's lots of options for those project-like activities. And that's that offline activity. It looks like a little globe with a line through it. So our last use case, right on time, is use case 5. So in this use case, you've got some students have run out of attempts on a particular assessment or check for understanding, CFU, in their learning journey. So if we think back to the very beginning of this, the learning journey was that personalized path that each student has. And the assessments in that learning journey are often limited in number of attempts. So students can't just try again until they sort of work out the permutations with all the correct answers. So there is a cap, and sometimes your students will run out. So if you've retaught the concept and you want to assess it one more time, even if you have students that have no attempts left in their learning journey, you can use class activities to assign it again, and you can score it that way and use that for mastery. So this is sort of a way around the cap on the number of attempts students can have. So this last demo will give us a chance to look at one specific library called Course Map, which, if you remember back, is the items that we're pulling directly from the student learning journeys. So it's just one other grouping of activities that you have available to pick from.
All right. So let's say you want to reassess a CFU that your students studied in class. So there are a few ways that you can actually access this course map library. The first is, if you recall back to searching within your scope and sequence, how it's organized domain and lesson that aligns with your school if you're a lab school. You can use that to click in, find the associated lesson, and then you just have to scroll down to course map and you'll be able to just assign it right from here. You also have the option, however, to type in a keyword if you'd like, and then use this filter option to only select the course map. Apply filter, and we can see the standards associated, and we can also see all of the, for this example, CFUs associated with inverse from the course map. You can also search by competency if you'd prefer. It's a little easier that way.
Oh, really? I'm a keyword kind of person.
If you want a very specific one.
Yeah. All right. So I guess it's good that there's options for the keyword folk among us and the filter by competency people. So in our last 2 minutes, just to very quickly recap everything. First of all, no pressure, because again, this will be on our YouTube channel. You can watch it back again and pause us as much as you need. But class activities are activities that you can assign to supplement what your students are doing in their learning journeys. This is totally an if you choose situation. You can operate whatever Navigator course you're using without class activities, or you can supplement what your students are doing with class activities. We talked about 5 use cases today. Some of those were using class activities as formative assessments, like an exit ticket. Some were talking about how you can assign activities, whether for support or for enrichment, to just a handful of students. We also looked at Go Live, that feature that gamifies the experience, and you can run it anonymously so no one gets stressed out about their scores showing up. And then you can also do this by setting up a class activity that allows students to reattempt something they've maxed out in their learning journey. That is just a handful of ways you can use class activities. We highly encourage you to explore and find the way that works best for you. Again, remember, you don't have to create anything if you don't want to. There's lots of activities there for you to choose from, and experiment. Give it a shot. Just remember to activate first. Don't be like me. Make sure you turn it on. So final slide here, just support resources. Again, you have always access to our community site, community.gooru.org. This is where you find the slide deck. There is the user handbook, which is sort of like a how-to guide. And then there is our YouTube page, which has lots of little short videos on how to do different things, including some of the things we talked about here, and longer webinar videos like this one. If you need any help, please just let us know at support@gooru.org. We are happy to assist you however we can. And we thank you so much for joining us here. Hope you all have a great rest of the night. Bye.
Hi, thank you so much.